Peter here. I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness living with CPTSD. This is a bit of a continuation of my last video I did where I explained what it was like to be a Jehovah's Witness and what it was like to leave the religion. One of the side effects was realizing fairly recently that I was dealing with something called CPTSD. A lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses I've spoken to have explained some of these similar symptoms to me. And I just wanted to share what it was like from my perspective to live with it. And just to kind of get some information out there. A lot of people don't know about this. I didn't really know about it. Once I did find out about it, though, it made so much sense. Everything it was like puzzle pieces just came right together. So I would like to see what I can do to help someone else. Maybe there's someone else who doesn't understand what's happening, and maybe some of this will resonate with you. And like me, when I watch this from someone else, it might help you start a path of healing too. So hopefully this helps you. So CPTSD, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, is usually caused by living through prolonged trauma, basically, or several incidents of trauma. Usually it's early on in childhood, and it's things that happen that basically stunt your growth and development at an early age. And then you obviously continue to age into adulthood, and you just kind of never mentally dealt with certain things that happen at a certain time. You know the feeling you get when, you're really scared about something? Let's say like you're crossing the street, you look up and it almost looks like you're about to get hit by a car. That rush you get, that feeling of like, that's CPTSD for a lot of people. That's literally like your body is stuck in that sensation where that gets triggered like that. Like certain things that will remind you of past events will throw you right back into that like shock kind of fight or flight. Speaking as someone who's been dealing with it for the longest, it's exhausting. It really is exhausting. It takes so much energy from you because literally you're spending so much of your energy just trying to get through the end of your day. Like when I say one day at a time, I say that to myself every morning. I say the Serenity Prayer every morning before I do anything. Because to me, it is a struggle sometimes just to get out of bed. I mean, it sounds pathetic, I'm sure, to some people. But for me, there are times I wake up and there's goosebumps all over my body. My hair feels like it's standing up on the back of my neck. I don't know if it's because I've had a nightmare. I just don't remember when I wake up. But it's like I feel like I'm trapped in adrenaline when I wake up. And it's such an awful feeling. And there's times where, like, unfortunately, I can't get out of bed some days. It's been pretty bad. I've missed so many days of work, unfortunately, because of having to deal with this. And I'm trying really hard to push through it. Unfortunately, I'm on my own with a lot of it. Unfortunately, the medical field doesn't seem to give two shits about... That sounds harsh, but it doesn't really seem like they're really in it to win it for this kind of thing, if that makes sense. But yeah, so a lot of my own research has helped me heal. A lot of my own, just watching other people talk about their experiences has also validated my feelings. Like, okay, wow, so I'm not crazy. Someone else is feeling this. Someone else went through this and is thinking that they're the only ones out there feeling like this. So yeah. One of the heavier ones I notice is numbness. Like there are times when I go into a dissociative state where it's like your mind just leaves your body. So if I start getting overwhelmed or just feeling like too much is happening and I can't absorb it quick enough, sometimes I'll shut down. Like I'll notice that it's almost like you can feel your consciousness begin to just start fading to the back of your brain. And you're on autopilot. Like, I'm still here. I'm still looking. I'm still talking. I'm still listening. I'm still whatever. But myself, me, I'm trapped back there someplace. And it can be very hard to pull yourself back out of that, to come back to your body. And when you get into that dissociation mode, that feeling of just disconnect, You know, it really is sometimes like you're underwater. You know, it's almost like everything around you does seem to blur a little bit. The sounds almost seem like they're underwater. Like you just kind of, it's weird. You go into a little bit of a shell. So living like that, you know, constantly having your energy depleted at all times, like it's just, it's hard, man. It really is hard to keep it going sometimes. So I now, after doing a bunch of this suffering on my own, I now also, I see in other people, you know, it's I can sense it sometimes, their pain, and it can be a little overwhelming. You can't tell by all the cuts in the video, the lack of focus is another one. Um, yeah, that's another one that kind of comes around where, you know, sometimes people are talking and I'm like, and then I'll kind of snap back and be like, whoa, I'm sorry, what were you saying? And they're, you know, they'll look at you like, bitch, you're stupid. And you're like, I'm so sorry. It's a very common thing that you experience. It's just kind of like really hard to focus. There's times I realize where it affects your memory, where, you know, you go to think about something that happened yesterday and you realize, wait, that wasn't yesterday. That was like 3 days ago. Or, you know, you just, I don't know. You just, it goes someplace in there. But a lot of disconnecting, a lot of feeling like you're not real. There's times where it's really hard to describe this, but when I'm in a really bad point, it's almost like the world seems hazy, like it's fake. It feels like, you know, you're in a different place. You're there with everyone, but it's almost like you're on a different plane of existence. Like nobody really, they see you, but no one's actually seeing you. And you feel like you're just kind of in a weird state of being. Nothing really feels right. You're on high alert. You're looking around at everything. It's a really weird feeling. That can actually go the opposite way too, by the way. You can actually go into a state of, instead of being hyper alert, you're more of everything really completely does shut down, where you don't really look around at what's around you. You just kind of like tunnel vision and you're trapped. This one's hella weird. But sometimes I even feel like I've already lived my life. Like I've already lived this already. Like this has already happened to me. And when beautiful moments are happening, when really good things are happening, like let's say for example, if I'm hanging out with my husband, sometimes I'll be feeling like as we're hanging out, it's almost like I'm not actually in that moment. I'm not actually hanging out. It's that I'm remembering what this was like to hang out. And then he's already gone. That's rough. Excuse me. That's real fucking rough, y'all. That's not fun. That is really not fun. To be hanging out with people. Or to feel that way about people that you're close with. You know, because you're trying to experience these happy moments and then it's just so fleeting. It's just like it's wanting to run away from you. Yeah. It's a bitch. We all have, you know, like our inner thought voice. There's always like the thinking voice you have. And a lot of times that voice is replaced with things that like my parents have screamed at me before or just told me, or things that other people have told me, or, you know, such like that. I mean, out of nowhere, just sitting there, just kind of minding your own business, and then just having suddenly a memory of my father saying something, you know, on Father's Day comes around and everyone else is celebrating, and all I can think about was how my dad would knock me down and then say things like, get up so I can knock you back down on your ass again. And like, Another one that I notice that I personally struggle with a lot sometimes is intrusive thoughts. So basically, your mind just starts racing with all kinds of weird, just like really unpleasant feelings. You know, it just feels like you get rushed. Kind of like if you're trying to concentrate and music just kind of seems to tune up really loud, and it's music you can't really ignore. It's kind of like obnoxiously screeching into your ears, and you're still sitting here. I'm still sitting with you trying to have a conversation, but it's like that negative rush of feelings or trigger or whatever that's happening is basically taking over, and I'm doing everything in my power to look present and look like I'm here. But in here, like, I don't know what the hell's happening. There's a battle happening in there, and I'm trying to figure it out. Basically, yeah, sudden anxiety out of nowhere, sudden depression, the shutting down, the not feeling real, difficulty maintaining friendships for sure. And sometimes people just don't. If they don't understand you, they don't really, you know, to them, their perception is you don't care, you're an asshole, you're just negative, you're toxic, one of those, like, it's just one of those, and they kind of just, it is difficult sometimes to, you know, express that because there's a lot of fear of intimacy too. There's a lot of not wanting to be vulnerable to people. Like, this is killing me right now to do this, I'm not gonna lie. But maybe because there's not a physical person here, it's okay. I don't know. But it makes it really difficult to have genuine connections with people. You go into isolation mode. You just kind of like, you know, you watch as everything fades away, and you're just too energyless, and it feels like sometimes too broken to do anything about it. You just kind of like, okay, well, I don't have that energy right now to fix any of this. I have to keep going. I have to get to the end of the day somehow. So you just kind of keep pushing. Sometimes being perceived as having no ambition because, again, half the time you're literally just trying to figure out a way to get through the end of your day. You're just trying to figure out how to literally survive. You're just focused on survival. It just feels like you're drowning a lot, you know, and a lot of people can't see that. They see you and they're like, oh, you seem functioning, you seem fine when we're hanging out, or you seem whatever. You joke a lot. And it's like, yeah, you know, the humor's got to come out sometimes because otherwise. Another intense one that I know I've heard from other people is the flashbacks. That's the worst one for me, is the flashbacks. There's times where, out of nowhere, this kind of goes along with the intrusive thoughts. Trigger warning here, by the way. I'm going to give an example. So, for some reason, this one comes back to me a lot. But there was this one incident where my mother, me, my brother, and my sister were at the apartment complex we lived at. There was a playground. There was a lady sitting off to the side reading a book. And my brother started getting sick. Like, he started gagging. And my mother was standing over there with him. And I can tell she kind of panicked, I guess, because there was a lady there and she was watching. And she was like, oh, what do I do? So my brother started to throw up, and my mother, for some reason, looked to me and was like, cover his mouth. Honestly, I think she panicked. I don't think she was thinking straight. Clearly, she wasn't thinking straight because that would mean that I would kill him doing that. Not the best idea. So I think what she was trying to say was she somehow didn't want it to hit the ground. Like, you know, if it happened inside, like, oh, don't let it get on the carpet. Honey, we're in the grass. Like, who cares? So, I refused. I'm not going to go and choke my brother with his own vomit. No. So I refused. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And when I started kind of showing her I wasn't going to do it, she screamed at me in front of this woman, "You're useless." And like, I don't know. See, even like right now I'm trying to like talk about it and I don't have words for it. It's just, you know, it's one of those things that it'll play in my head. Like I'll hear her voice and I see her face and I see her pointing and I hear "you're useless" sometimes on a loop, and it'll just keep playing. That memory will keep replaying itself from beginning to end. And that's one thing I think people don't understand is, you know, I can be anywhere. I can appear to be totally fine, and I'll get hit with that out of nowhere. And I'm forcing myself through it. I'm forcing myself to function through it. But things like that are happening for a lot of people who are dealing with this. You know, you get thrown into some very unpleasant places real fast, out of nowhere. And you know how hard it is to look at a person and tell them like, "Hey, I'm suffering with this." Nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to understand. And the ones that do understand are the ones that also have felt this, the ones that also are dealing with anxiety, the ones who survived trauma, the ones who know that what you're talking about isn't bullshit, you know? So, but you know, it really does make connections hard. There's times where, you know, I look at my dog, for example, and I'm petting her, and I'll just start crying out of nowhere because all I can think about for some reason is the day that I'm going to lose her. Or I'll look at my husband and I'll think, you know, what if he has a stroke or something right now? What happens if, yeah, you just kind of, unfortunately, it's like there's this other force inside of you that's always throwing the worst case scenarios at you at all fucking times. But yeah, it's exhausting. It is really exhausting. And, you know, you really do your best to try to hold it together. Um, Sometimes you don't want to hang out. Sometimes you can't be there for people. Sometimes you literally need to be selfish and be like, "I'm sorry, but I need my energy right now because I don't have any to give." And a lot of people don't, that doesn't jive with many people. So yeah, it's lonely. But I mean, at the same time, the only real plus to it is when you do find someone who has a genuine connection with you, is they don't judge you for that. They don't, they understand where you're coming from because they feel it, you know? And it's really difficult to get this kind of help in the medical field too, because it's not a widely recognized thing as of now. And so, you know, last year, for example, I spent an entire year looking for help for this whole thing, and I got none. I've been literally grazing by the skin of my teeth this entire time. But I mean, I'm glad I'm doing it. I'm glad that I'm still alive. A lot of people, unfortunately, they don't make it. A lot of people can't handle this. A lot of people with CPTSD also experience suicidal feelings, I guess, if you will. There was one night where I was walking, and things at that time in my at that point in my life were so hectic, beyond hectic. Things were just bad. I was going over an overpass over a major highway, and I remember it was really late at night. I was out. I was one of the only people out there walking. There were some cars on the highway and such, obviously, but I remember when I got to the top, I just leaned over and looked down into the cars, and I knew I wasn't going to do it. Like, my body knew that it wasn't going anywhere, but my mind was imagining, what would that be like? How quick would that be? Would I feel much pain? Would anyone care? Who would find me? Things like that. Really, to sum it up, it's hell. It's hell in your mind at all times. There are, I will say, not at all times. There are times where you do get some moments of peace and serenity, where you feel like just nothingness, peace. Or I don't know if that's just me being numb. Honestly, I don't know. But yeah, it's real. It's out there. It's something that a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are dealing with, especially. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to that the guilt and shame is another huge thing. There is such an intense guilt and such an intense shame for existing. Everything you do wrong seems magnified to you. You feel like everyone's talking about you. You feel like nobody really likes you. You feel like it's awful. Sometimes the pain from having flashbacks or just kind of remembering things, because there's also, I definitely feel like there's repressed memories. There's gaps I have where just certain things aren't there, and I feel like my body remembers certain things happening. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. There's times where it's been so bad that when I'm alone, I've felt such a buildup of this energy, of this despair. It feels like pure despair, where I've actually found myself screaming to myself because I'm reliving flashbacks. It's like so realistic that they're happening again, and it's almost like I can feel everything again, and I'm there again. Another one of my flashback issues, and this one I will I will own up to what happened with some of it. But in second grade, I ended up having trouble with a math assignment that we were supposed to do overnight or something like that. And I do remember that I couldn't do it. I was having trouble with it. So for some reason, and obviously I wasn't getting help at home for it. I don't think anyone even knew I had the assignment, to be honest. So I went to school, and I'm not proud of this moment, but I was a child. I looked over, I took another student's homework, I erased their name, and I put my name on it, and I submitted it because I didn't know how to do it myself. Not proud of it again. Very ashamed to have done it. But I was in second grade. Like, come on. It's a lot of people, you learn as you grow. Wouldn't do that now, that's for sure. But when I got home, I remember she told me, a teacher, that's what it was. She was like, I'm going to call your mom. And I was like, that's lovely. That's fantastic. So when I got home, I remember that we lived like a half hour. I was dropped off at one place, and my parents would pick me up there, and we would drive about a half hour back to where we were actually staying, just to kind of stay in the school district. So we had a van, and I remember coming home. My mom was in the driver's seat, and my dad was in the back of the van. And when I opened the door, I had an art project that I also had made that I got. And I kind of knew, this is probably not going to be a pleasant conversation. Maybe I should try to smooth it over and be like, oh, I have a surprise for you, and try to bring up this art project. So I did, and I was just like, hey, I got a surprise for you. And my father was like, yeah, I got a surprise for you too. Yeah, he sure did. I just remember as soon as I got in the car, I closed the door, and I don't remember how old you are in second grade, but you're hella young, and this dude is bigger than me by a lot. And he's just straight wailing down on me the entire car ride. The entire car ride. He did not stop unless there was a red light. And my mom every now and then would look back, and she would be like, oh, calm down, calm down. But continue to drive all the way home as I screamed and cried the whole time as he beat on me. And you know what? Fuck that, first of all. I'm sorry. But no. That's another prime example of, it's just being in that scenario. So now, for example, let's say recently this happened. Actually, someone was joking with me, and they went to make a slapping motion towards my face, and I wasn't expecting it. And when their hand, the air from their hand hit me, I actually felt like I was slapped. I felt for a second the hot sting, the sound, the eardrum kind of going, losing your hearing for a second, all that. And I turned my head and everything. And that's unfortunately a side effect. Things like that happen. And until I can figure out how to undo all that and fully heal from these things, those are things unfortunately I have to deal with. There is so much stuff that happened with my parents, so many things. And I'll never forget it. I'll never be able to undo the pain that I have now as an adult, just from things they did or said. But I do forgive them. I do feel like, I forgive. I can't forget. I'll forgive, but I can't forget. I feel like for me, they serve as a prime example of what happens when you don't treat your trauma and you give into the darkness. And I don't want to end up that way. And I feel like sometimes, unfortunately, because of the pain that I am dealing with, that I have made a lot of unfortunate choices, a lot of really bad, stupid mistakes. I've hurt people before. I've done stupid things. And I realize now it's because I was so caught up in that pain that I was just lashing. And I see now that that's what they were doing. And yeah, I don't want that to be me. So I got to do what I can to break the cycle. For me, that means not having kids. I feel like I need to be the last of it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know this. So there was some heavy stuff in here. Some heavy stuff in the last one. The reason I made that last video anyway was because I realized I was coming to a point where I was floored. Like I was literally, the trauma has pretty much overwhelmed all of me. And I'm now getting to the point where I'm trying to claw my way back up now that I have awareness of some of the things, some of the behaviors, some of the reasonings, some of why this is happening. So I'm extremely grateful that I found out what this was, because it really did shift things into perspective for me, and now things make so much more sense. Unfortunately, it doesn't make the symptoms go away, but at least now I know why it's happening. Now I know that I'm dissociating. Now I know that I'm literally like, wow, I spend so much time not realizing that I zoned out and I totally astral projected someplace. And I'll be like that for a long while too sometimes. If I'm by myself, if I'm home by myself, there's days where I've been home alone and hours go by. Hours, like talking near the end of the day. And I'll kind of snap to and realize I haven't moved from this spot, but maybe once to get up and use the restroom. And that's it. And like, you don't realize it's happening. Sometimes you literally would just wake up. I'll be walking sometimes looking at my feet. And then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I'm walking. Whoa, where am I? Oh, I'm at work. Like things like that just happen. It makes, everyday life really difficult. You're basically struggling all the time. And it's really rough to go through it and be so misunderstood by the people around you. At least this is more to the Jehovah's Witness side of things, or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, if you will. Getting triggered by feeling ignored. If you were someone who was dissociated, disassociated. That's the Jehovah's Witness version. So there's the disfellowshipping is kicking out, disassociation is you leaving. So basically, if you've ever been either, you understand what that's like. How your family won't talk to you, how none of your friends, your congregation will acknowledge you ever again until you walk back in and say that you want to be a Jehovah's Witness. And then you got to fight for, a year to get back in their good graces? No. But like, you know what that's like when you're struggling with this and you feel like you're trying to get someone's attention and they're not seeing you, they're not hearing you. That will trigger, for me anyway, that triggers me sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes it really does. There's times where I'll be trying to get someone's attention. Hey, excuse me, sir, and you'll go there. Because of that feeling, it automatically takes me back to that situation, that previous situation with the Jehovah's Witnesses. Armageddon fear, another one for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. There was this one instance where we had some really weird sandstorm that came around or something like that, and it made the sky look kind of funky, and they did tell everyone it was going to be looking like that, and it was supposed to be super beautiful. I went outside with my husband, we were taking pictures, and I was like, this is so cool, this is amazing. And then it wasn't so amazing. For some reason, it was like the clouds, my mind started to imagine seeing, angels coming out of the clouds with trumpets or horses, the four horsemen. Or my mind started to imagine seeing these things in the clouds, and I freaked out so bad thinking that the end of the world was happening right there and then. And all I could do was turn to my husband and just tell, I am so sorry for anything I've ever done to hurt you. I love you so much. I'm so sorry. You mean so much. Pulled him in for a hug, because in my mind, that was it. And then I realized, like, nobody else had the reaction. Everyone else was like, this is so gorgeous. Do you see this? How beautiful is this? I'm freaking out in the background, thinking I'm going to die. So yeah, there's a lot of trauma, religious trauma, that I'm trying to overcome, that with the CPTSD is amplified. So it's like you have the CPTSD and the religious stuff that kind of helped push that into motion. And then you combine that with a really shitty school experience and being bullied and a fucked up home life. And guess what? That was your whole my whole first 19 years of living was stuck in that illusion. And I didn't know the real world until I came out of being a Jehovah's Witness. Like, I was joining society for the first time at 19 years old. All these other people had a foundation to build upon, and I had a cracked foundation, trying to put a house up and watching it fall down every time. Kind of like I'm doing now, but at the same time, you won't really get that if you haven't come from that situation. Because if you've been properly developed and you've gone through life, you were allowed to have friends, you were allowed to have normal experiences, you weren't shamed for being a sexual being, you weren't beaten instead of disciplined, because there is a difference. You don't whoop an ass for a half hour for a child, no matter what they did. That's not acceptable behavior. That's just not acceptable. And doing it again. But I feel like, you should be able to speak on it. You should be able to, if you're going through it, you should be able to talk about it. There's people out there that are going through all kinds of things that don't feel powerful enough to speak on it, that don't feel like they have a voice. So I would like to be that voice for you and tell you that, hey, if you're going through these things, I just want you to know you're not alone. There's people out there like me. There's people out there like you that are suffering from this stuff. And there's help out there. We just have to find the right people. If you're in the right area, my area where I am, I guess, is just, so that's that. But I would still suggest maybe, going online, checking out psychologytoday.com was another one I used a lot, just to kind of sift through therapists and things like that. And make sure going forward, I'm personally going to say this, from now on, when I go to anyone, I'm going to make sure that they are trauma informed, because if they're not, there's so much of your healing that's not going to get addressed, because they're going to diagnose you with like a bipolar or, narcissistic personality disorder, MPD, whatever, you know what I'm saying. But yeah, a lot of times we get misdiagnosed because people aren't informed. So thank you for listening to me. Also, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who did watch my last one. That was extremely touching. I can't tell you how nervous I was to produce that. But I felt like after so many years of not feeling like I was allowed to tell my story, I felt like there's so many people out there that are feeling that way. And we really shouldn't. You really shouldn't feel that way. You should be able to heal, to talk things out. And, you know, I really hope that if you're dealing with this, that you have a support system, that you have kind and caring people in your lives that get you, that know that we're working on ourselves. We're trying to make things right. So, not your fault. You didn't cause it. You're just living with it. They made it. You got to carry it. Unfortunately, that's the reality. But you know, there's people out there for you. So thankful for everyone's comments. I appreciate all of you. Um, I definitely try my best to read through everything and comment back. I've gotten a lot of really beautiful, a lot of heartbreaking stories too. But your stories have also helped me to heal, just hearing them, just kind of going through the comments and, you know, just everything. So I want to say thank all of you for helping me to get to a place where I can do this. Even, you know, there were times where I just stayed shut and didn't do anything, but I have to do what I have to do to heal. And this is part of my process. So thank you all for helping me to be there. Um, I hope you guys are okay. And till next time, see ya.